Number 1.
Jackson was last seen in St. Augustine, Florida on January 11, 2007. That morning, he dropped his young daughter off at Cathedral Parish School on St. George Street. His routine after that would be to go home, do chores and be ready for work by 2 p.m. He worked at 2 o'clock to 10 p.m. shift at a rest area off Interstate 95 and would be home by 10:30 p.m. There is evidence that Jackson arrived home after he dropped his child off at school, but he never showed up for work that day, and when his wife called him as usual at 4 p.m. the call went straight to voicemail. He has never been heard from again. Jackson's gray 4-door 1989 Pontiac 6000 with the license plate numbered X20EXQ disappeared with him. His wife stated the vehicle was in poor condition and she didn't think he could have gotten very far in it. Jackson's wife said her husband went through periodic bouts of depression, but investigators don't believe his mental health issues had anything to do with his disappearance, and they don't think he tried to harm himself. He is described as a dependable, reliable man who had never left without warning before. Foul play is suspected in his case, which remains unsolved.
Number 2.
Maurice left his family's Fort Lauderdale, Florida residence on November 30, 1983, to attend a basketball practice at nearby Dillard High School, where he was a student. It has been established that Maurice arrived at the Franklin Park basketball court that day, but he never showed up for practice. 2 teenage girls reported they saw him being forced into an Oldsmobile by 2 unidentified African American men, but this has not been confirmed. He has never been heard from again. Maurice was involved in many activities in 1983. He was choir boy at the Piney Grove First Baptist Church, he played junior varsity basketball and ran track, and he was a junior ROTC cadet. He dreamed of becoming a doctor someday. Maurice left his wallet, money and identification behind at his grandmother's home in the 200 block of Northwest 30th Terrace. At the time of his disappearance, he lived back and forth between his grandmother's residence and his mother's home in Alabama. His grandmother still lives in the same house she shared with him in 1983 and has kept the same phone number. Due to police procedures in place at the time Maurice vanished, authorities did not begin searching for him for 3 days after his disappearance was reported. His case remains unsolved, and little evidence is available as to his fate. Some agencies state Maurice went missing on November 28, 1983. In 2009, a documentary filmmaker announced her intention to make a film about his disappearance.
Number 3.
Jessie was last seen at the home of Crystal Anderson in the 700 block of Eisenhower Drive in Pahokee, Florida before noon on June 23, 2013. Anderson was a good friend of Jessie's and babysat her children. The 2 women planned to attend church together that day. Jessie has never been heard from again. Late in the evening on June 24, Anderson was found shot to death inside the bedroom of her residence. The murder weapon, a .38 caliber handgun, was missing, and there was no sign of Jessie either. Her SUV was found parked at the Palm Beach Golf Center in the 7700 block of Military Trail in Riviera Beach, Florida. This is 2 miles from the store where Jessie worked. In December 2013, Jammie Washington was charged with the murders of both Anderson and Jessie. Photos of Washington and Anderson are posted with this case summary. Washington is Jessie's former boyfriend. He has an extensive criminal history dating back to 2003, including convictions for aggravated assault and sexual battery on a previous girlfriend. She had gotten a temporary domestic violence injunction against him prior to her disappearance and was seeking a permanent one. Jessie stated he had beaten her many times, locked her in her own home and threatened her, and that she was afraid for her life. She wanted an order keeping him away from her residence on Palm Boulevard in Pahokee, her workplace, and Anderson's home. Jessie disappeared the weekend before the court hearing about her domestic violence injunction. Authorities believe Washington went to Anderson's home to speak to Jessie and there was a confrontation, and both women were killed, with Jessie being the primary target. DNA evidence and witness statements support the prosecution's case. After Anderson's murder and Jessie's disappearance, Washington was arrested on a misdemeanor battery charge stemming from a prior incident with Jessie. He was still in jail on that charge when he was charged with the murders. In July 2019, he was convicted of first-degree murder in the slayings of Anderson and Jessie, as well as burglary, while armed for entering Anderson's home on the day of her death. He was sentenced to a mandatory term of life in prison. Jessie's body has never been found and may have been dumped in the sugarcane fields or in a canal in the Belglade, Florida area. Foul play is suspected in her case due to the circumstances involved.
Number 4.
Johnson was last seen leaving her home to go to class at St. Petersburg Junior College in Clearwater, Florida. She never arrived. Her car was found abandoned behind a Hardee's restaurant at Belcher Road and East Bay Drive in Largo, Florida. An African-American male who gave his name as Johnny Bailey called a towing company to report that the vehicle was having trouble and needed to be towed. The man has never been identified. The car turned out to have a loose battery connection. Nothing else was wrong with it. 2 days later, Johnson's father reported her missing. That same day, he got a letter supposedly from Johnson, which stated she was involved with drugs, was moving to Orlando, Florida to straighten out her life. Handwriting experts examined the letter and concluded she did in fact write it. Johnson has never been heard from again. Authorities believe Johnson's case may be related to the disappearances of Retha Hears from Largo and Margaret Dash from Clearwater, Florida. All three women had been dating Cleveland Hill Jr., a married asphalt contractor, when they disappeared. A photo of Hill is posted with this case summary. A friend of Johnson's stated Hill gave her money and expensive gifts, including a new car which her parents made her return. By the time of her disappearance, Johnson was frightened of Hill and wanted to end their relationship. She told her father that Hill had said he could make people disappear and told her mother he had threatened her. After Johnson's disappearance, Hill told police she was involved in cocaine trafficking and had possibly moved to Orlando, Florida. Hill served a prison sentence for 2 accounts of assault after he shot his wife and mother-in-law in 1968, and in 1992 he was convicted of drug trafficking. He was released from prison in 2008 and now lives in Virginia. He has never been charged in connection with any of the missing women's cases, and he maintains his innocence. The missing women did not know each other, and authorities have found no connection between them other than their association with Hill. Foul play is suspected in all 3 cases, which remain unsolved.
Number 5.
Gail was last seen in her hometown of Thanatisasa, Florida on September 22, 1972. She came home from school, ate a sandwich, then left home to walk her pet raccoon, Bandit, on a leash. Witnesses saw her standing near a white car parked on the edge of a wooded area, but nobody saw her get in the vehicle. Gail has never been heard from again. Bandit never returned to the house either. Gail's parents thought they could identify the raccoon by a burn on his foot and a scrape on his nose. The police brought them 17 raccoon carcasses, but they didn't recognize any of them. Gail's parents stated they did not believe their daughter had left of her own free will because she was close to her older brother and wasn't having trouble at home. They theorized she had been abducted and stated someone could have gained her trust by taking an interest in Bandit, whom she enjoyed showing to people. 3 people have confessed to Gail's murder, but none of the accounts have been verified. The serial killer Gerald Stano was one of those who claimed to have caused her death. He confessed to the murders of 41 women, including Susan Bassel, whose body was never found. A photograph of Stano is posted with this case summary. He was executed in 1998. Gail moved to Florida from Romulus, Michigan a few months before her disappearance and enrolled in Greco Junior High School 3 weeks before she vanished. She has 6 siblings. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 6.
Geanna's husband, Wilfred Jones, told authorities that his wife departed from their residence for work in Jacksonville, Florida, during the morning hours of November 5, 2000. She never arrived at work and has not been heard from again. She, Wilfred and their children moved into a new home shortly before she vanished. Geanna's red 2000 Ford Expedition SUV was discovered abandoned a mile from her family's home shortly afterwards. Investigators launched an extensive search in the area and concentrated on a nearby retention pond. Authorities announced that they discovered Geanna's blood inside her residence, along with additional unspecified indications of foul play. Wilfred reportedly left the Jacksonville area after his wife's disappearance. He was not allowed to enter their house after officials declared the premises a probable crime scene. Shortly after Geanna vanished, the house caught fire. Details about the fire are unknown. Geanna is the mother of 6 children. The 4 minors were placed in the custody of the Florida Department of Children's Services in mid-November 2000. Investigators announced that they hoped to make an arrest in connection with Geanna's presumed murder in November 2002. No arrests were made, however, and no suspects have been publicly identified. Foul play is suspected in her case, which remains unsolved.
Number 7.
Jones was last seen in Jacksonville, Florida on February 7, 2016. She had moved there from Pell City, Alabama the previous autumn to live with Jackie Nick Kelly Jr., a man she'd met online. They lived in an apartment in the 12,300 block of Mandarin Road. A photo of Kelly is posted with this case summary. He initially told police she had gotten upset about a Facebook post he'd made, left the apartment, and never came back. A few days later, he changed his story and said they got a drunken argument and she hit him with a coffee cup and knocked him unconscious. When he woke up the next day, she was gone. He reported her missing on February 9. The same day Jones was reported missing, her tan 1996 Toyota Avalon, which is the Alabama license plate number 59DH431, a brown right front fender and a rusted hood, was found abandoned at the Beals store, where she worked in the 12,200 block of San Jose Boulevard. A photo of the car is posted with this case summary. Video surveillance of the parking lot shows someone driving it into the parking lot at 6:45 p.m. on February 7. When it was located, the driver's seat was pushed back, indicating that someone taller, that Jones was the last person to drive it. Jones maintained regular contact with her adult son in Alabama, but he hasn't heard from her since she disappeared. He said Jones was initially happy in Florida, but a few weeks before she disappeared, she told her son she was upset because Kelly drank heavily. Kelly has hired a lawyer and refused to cooperate with the investigation into Jones' disappearance. Police searched the apartment they shared and seized Kelly's pickup truck. He did have a minor head injury after her disappearance, and police found a broken cup and blood at his home, which might correspond with his statement about being knocked unconscious by Jones. Authorities are investigating Jones' case as a possible homicide. Her family doesn't believe she would have left of her own accord, as she's described as a family-oriented person who was devoted to her two sons and her grandchildren. Her case remains unsolved.